So first, what few people actually realize is Vice's video content actually started out in a joint venture partnership with MTV. The same executive who was a true visionary. So what he said is, hey, I'll give you the money, we'll go in joint venture partnerships and allow you to start taking your genius of everything they had done over the past 20 plus years with their physical magazine and turn it into digital content.
It was a punk magazine in Montreal that over the course of 20 years exploded to include a website, a record label, and more recently, an HBO TV series.
So at the same time that this deal was happening between MTV and Vice, I was doing this deal with this MTV executive. So I got introduced directly to Shane Smith and Eddie Moretti, who was the head of their content. Now, when I started entering these meetings with Vice and the executive at MTV, I was honestly just a fly on the wall. And the thing that I noticed immediately was Shane Smith. And if you haven't seen any of the Vice content, I highly recommend going and checking it out. Now, Shane is a master salesman. He's probably one of the best salesmen I have ever met. Then secondarily was just their overall vision, their unique vision for their content. They were covering stories in such a unique way that had never been on news or television before. I think that the first time I heard about Vice through MTV, and maybe even Shane said it, but their analogy was,
they said, if we gave you some money, like what would you do with it? And we said, we would do 60 Minutes meets Jackass, like to speak their language. It's kind of like that Jaws in space pitch for Star Wars.
And that's the perfect analogy for that partnership with MTV because Jackass was at its height. But again, the content had substance. They were telling real stories from all around the world.
It's spawning what some say is a new form of TV news, trying to brand investigative journalism as cool, with exposés on everything from the Fukushima nuclear disaster to using basketball star Dennis Rodman to gain access to North Korea.
I'm sorry that my country and your country are not on good terms.
And as I dove further and further into their business model and their vision, I could see where they were going to have tremendous success. But that tremendous success also led to their dramatic decrease in their overall valuation. So beyond just the content and the vision of the content, which was so brilliant, the reason that their valuation reached upwards of billions and billions of dollars is because of Shane.
I always used to say that if Vice is doing news, then the world is completely f***ed. When we first started, we just did the holy trinity of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. We were opening our bureau in China. There was a story of a 2-week traffic jam that stretched from Beijing to Mongolia. Why isn't somebody saying something about this? Somebody should be saying something about this. And then I realized, oh, I have the largest youth platform in the world.
And what happened was they got some very key advisors and investors into the company. One was Tom Freston, who was one of the keys to success at MTV. But at this time, Tom wasn't really involved in MTV, but he saw the brilliance of what Vice could become. So what Tom did that was so brilliant is he set up these meetings with some of the largest media agencies in the world. The media agencies that served the largest brands, such as the HPs of the world, such as the Nikes, the Adidases. They were getting into these rooms with the people that really controlled the marketing budgets for the biggest brands, to the tune of billions and billions of dollars of media spend. And what was so brilliant and effective about Shane's message is he would go into that boardroom with the people that, again, controlled billions of dollars of media and said, you know what? We are the only people in the world that can reach the trendsetters. Now, I will say Vice is probably one of the best, if not the best, of reaching the trendsetters in the world because they spent years and years cultivating relationships.
Johnny, God dang. Yes, sir.
As an old white woman, I have a lot of questions for today's youth.
My name is Chris Pape, better known as Freedom, which was my graffiti name.
When I was 13, I made this song called Friday.
We were in Britney Spears and NSYNC mode at the time.
On socials, their music videos and Jackass-style skits are getting numbers. Over 150 million, apparently.
I've been craving the Popeyes chicken sandwich all day.
At the same time, are they the only people that reach the trendsetters? No. But Shane knew how to move in those rooms and sell people on that vision. And because he was so effective of selling that vision, he got out of the bottom basement CPM advertising and got into larger conversations with these big brands saying, you know what, you're gonna pay us $10 to $100 million to launch a new channel with Vice's vision, Vice's voice, and then we're gonna wrap your brand into that voice.
When I say partner with brands, I mean partner, like production partner. So we actually come up with a lot of ideas and then go to perfect fit partners and say, okay, we're doing a movie about climbing a mountain. Well, we should do that with North Face or something. They see a lift because their demo gets it, they like it. We always say the millennial generation is this most savvy generation, marketing generation ever, because they've been marketed to since they were kids. Cartoons are made to sell cereal. They don't want you to bullshit. Right. And they get it.
And that's where the scale came so quickly, is because they were able to tap into those revenue streams. Now, that ability to sell also ultimately got them into trouble. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I think the beginning of the downfall of the valuation of Vice is when they launched their own first television network. Now, what happened when that launched? Their viewership was not at the level of other major cable providers. And that's where the valuation of how they were charging these brands tens of millions of dollars was falling flat, because now the brand advertisers could really see the potential audience size. So let's look at these article headlines that break down where Vice's valuation was at, and then some other articles that values where Vice has been over the past few years, and how some of their biggest investors think about the investment that they made. So again, I'm not undervaluing what Shane and Vice deliver in terms of content. It's just their vision, the way they went into these rooms and sold this huge story, just didn't match up to the numbers they were seeing through their cable channel. So the question is, if they didn't launch that cable channel, would they still have the valuation at today? That's hard to determine, because I think a part of their valuation that drove through the roof was that bigger vision of creating their own television network. I don't think this means that Vice is dead and can't come back. If you really look at the history of Vice, of constantly coming back and finding innovation to grow it into the media juggernaut it is today. So even today, Vice creates some of the most interesting content on the web. They are a master, in the same way that I talked about Shane hooking people in at the highest levels to win revenue. They are masters of hooking people into unique stories. Stories that normally you wouldn't even pay attention to. They're bringing in an audience that would never watch 60 Minutes. They would never watch CNN or Fox News. They are shining light on important topics, bringing people into important conversations that we all need to have as humans on the planet. So one of the key takeaways that I want for you, that I think can really dramatically increase your level of success or take your success to the next level, is this is a story about Shane. Even though we brought you in with the conversation about Vice as a brand, it was really driven by Shane's ability to hook people in, to create what I call a hook point. And what that means is a hook point grabs attention. It differentiates you, so people, whether it's online or offline, will be like, I want to hear more about what this person has to say. And when we think about what Shane's hook point is after going through this progression of Shane's story, it's the fact that he went into the biggest rooms and he said to the biggest brands, if you entrust us with your media budgets, we can reach the trendsetters of the world. Because they know if they can tap into a trendsetter, that their product will disseminate to the rest of the consumer base. And you see this over and over again. For example, why does Nike spend upwards of $6 billion a year on endorsements? Because Nike knows that that is their way in to the trendsetters. They can pay a LeBron James, a Kevin Hart to impact culture, to impact society at a larger scale. And Shane knew this. Shane knew how much money that these media companies spend to try and attract the trendsetters, the culture centers, all across the world. And that's what I want for you, is most people make this mistake that they say, just because I'm creating unique documentaries or creating unique content or I have a unique product or service, all of a sudden people are going to pay attention. But the bottom line is, in the hard truth of the reality of the world that we live in, there's no original idea. There's no original product, service, piece of content. It's about the context that you wrap it around. It's how you position your content, your message, and brand in a unique way that gets people to pay attention. And you see this on the web all the time. You see some of the most successful entrepreneurs today, Gary Vaynerchuk being one of them. He is a master It's taking things that have been said millions of times and repackaging them in a unique way to get people to pay attention. And that's one of the biggest reasons he's had success. Now, I'm not putting that down at all of what he does because he's a master at it and it's hard. So just take this away from this video, is you have a story to tell. You have a piece of content you want to create. You have a brand, you have a product, you have a service. So how can you duplicate what Shane was able to do? So thanks so much for watching the video. If you want to learn more about how to stand out in the way that Shane and Vice did, click the link below in my book, Hook Point: How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World. I've been studying the art of grabbing attention over the past 15 years, and I break down the most effective strategies in order to do so. Also, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If there's a brand, a product, or service that you would love for us to break down, either their success or failure, place the company name or the product in the comments below and be sure to tackle it on one of our next videos. And if you like this video, be sure to click the subscribe button and hit the like button, and I'll see you again soon.